The first season of Stranger Things blew me away for many reasons. It was atmospheric, well-paced, unique, with really well incorporated 80s nostalgia and a great soundtrack. But ultimately, what really made it were the characters at the heart of the show. I was transported not only into the era, but also into the private worlds of the characters. It was thrilling, heartfelt, and narratively satisfying. Season 2, while not quite as good as Season 1, maintained this. But Stranger Things was originally pitched as an anthology show, and by Season 3 this really starts to show. I mean, it was an enjoyable season.
I really liked it.
But for Stranger Things standards, it was not the one. Character arcs were abandoned partway through the season. There was lots of forced conflict between the kids that felt really awkward.
They're conspiring against me.
And the baffling departure from Hopper's character.
Crazy. You want to see real crazy?
Was definitely not fixed by that note at the end of the season that they shoehorned in. I was also disappointed by the direction they took with Erica, relegating her to a sassy comic relief sidekick rather than a fully developed character. In this video though, I'm going to focus on a character that has been playing on my mind from Stranger Things 3. Band geek and sarcastic Scoops Ahoy worker Robin, who also, it turns out, is gay. Now, I couldn't immediately work out why she felt off to me because unlike Erica, she's not a damaging stereotype. Indeed, compared to other attempts at LGBTQ representation in media, particularly media aimed at younger audiences, the representation that Robin offers is fine.
She sounds awesome.
I mean, it's no wonder people have been hailing her as queen and icon when you look at what else there is on offer. So why was I left feeling disappointed by Hawkins' first canonically gay character? Let's explore. First of all, Robin came out of nowhere. Stranger Things fans love the small town of Hawkins. The sleepy suburbia where monsters lurk is compelling, but this small town setting loses credibility when characters sprout up from nowhere. Meet Robin, who attended the same classes as Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan, but nobody knows her name or who she is.
I'm sorry, who are you? I'm Robin.
Perhaps this would be less of an issue if Robin's character was integrated into the world, but she isn't. We never meet her family or her friends. We never really even see her in a private moment on her own. The flashbacks in season 1 that help us get to know Hopper, Eleven, Jonathan, and Will work really well, and I can't help but wonder what a difference some flashbacks of Robin's character would have made to season 3. Imagine if we could have had a scene of Robin crushing on Tammy Thompson in class. But as it is, she only exists in relation to Steve and her job at the Mall. Everything we know about her is revealed through telling, not showing. How do we know she speaks 4 languages?
I'm fluent in 4 languages.
How do we know she's in a band?
And I've been in band for 12 years.
You get the idea. But this just means that she doesn't feel real to us in the same way the other characters do. Compare this to Max in season 2. We see her skateboarding, we see her gaming, we see her struggling against her brother Billy. We root for her inclusion in the friendship group, and we are scared for her when Billy bullies her. We know what she wants. But what does Robin want apart from cracking a Russian code to kill time at work? There's no emotional core to that want.
I don't even want credit, I'm just bored.
My next point is that Robin was originally straight, and it shows. When articles started popping up reporting that Robin was originally supposed to date Steve, I was not surprised, and it also validated a lot of the problems I'd had with her character. Maya Hawke was quoted in Pride saying, "Throughout filming, we started to feel like she and Steve shouldn't get together and that she's gay. Even when I go back and watch earlier episodes, it just seems like the most obvious decision ever." Unfortunately, saying this in retrospect doesn't change the fact that up until episode 7, tropes that signal heterosexual romance were used to establish the dynamic between Steve and Robin. The enemies to lovers trope is as old as Shakespeare and is so familiar to audiences that when we start to watch a film and see a man and a woman bickering, we know where it's going, and we're supposed to know where it's going as well. This trope is even taken to its final destination with Jim Hopper and Joyce Byers in season 3, but we're not going to talk about that.
Unfortunately, we're here.
We have to remember that we're not talking about real people here, we're talking about characters. It's true that in real life you can't tell that somebody is gay by observing them, but this is a piece of visual media and nothing is a coincidence. We are meant to notice Steve's and Robin's bickering and understand what it signals. We're meant to notice them accidentally holding hands and sort of have a knowing moment. We've already watched Nancy and Jonathan and Max and Lucas have these exact same moments in the build up to them coupling up.
That is such bullshit.
So then when Robin seemingly confesses her crush on Steve in the Russian base, it makes narrative sense. Pay attention to the soft romantic music, pay attention to the close-up that shows Robin smiling dreamily, and pay attention to the dialogue in which she notices Steve's really specific bagel preferences.
Bacon, egg, and cheese on a sesame bagel.
The only point in the monologue which leaves a tiny bit of room for a queer reading is right at the end when she says,
Even though all of us losers pretend to be above it all, we still just want to be popular. Accepted. Normal.
But the dominant reading of this scene is definitely one of heterosexual love. Therefore, when it came to episode 7, Robin's sexuality felt shoehorned in, which it was. The audience feels tricked. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that Steve and Robin didn't become just yet another couple in the many heterosexual couples in Stranger Things, but I just wish that her sexuality and her coming out could have been weaved into the narrative. So because Robin's sexuality was shoehorned into season 3, I'm now going to be discussing coming out as a plot twist. This is a trope that utilises LGBTQ+ identities as a plot twist. This can be problematic, particularly when the enormous task of coming out is trivialised, or when LGBTQ+ people's identities are used as punchlines.
Maybe we could catch a movie sometime. Nothing scary.
That sounds great, Kathy. You know, you're gonna love my boyfriend. He's like a total chick flick nut.
Now, the coming out scene in Stranger Things is not a punchline, but it is a plot twist.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Holy shit.
So while the scene was touching and well acted, I felt flat at the end of it. I was wrong-footed rather than deeply moved, and I questioned whether I should have seen it coming somehow. So to expand on why this coming out as a plot twist in Stranger Things doesn't work, we now need to talk about queercoding. Queercoding is when a character is given attributes associated with queerness to encourage the audience to read them as queer, even though they do not explicitly state their identity in the narrative. This technique is unfortunately often used to evoke villainy, but it doesn't have to be. So we can see how the treatment of Robin's sexuality is internally inconsistent when we compare it to the way that Will Byers has been queer-coded throughout the whole series.
Look, he's not like you, Hopper. He's not like me. He's not like most. He's a sensitive kid. Lonnie used to say he was queer, called him a fag.
So Will is queer-coded to establish his status as an outsider. He is framed as a sensitive boy who is bullied for being different. From the way his mother talks about him in season 1 to his rainbow drawings in season 2, all the way to season 3 when his lack of interest in girls isolates him from his friends, Will is consistently queer-coded throughout the entire series. In season 1 there are also homophobic bullies that represent the attitudes towards gay people in the 80s.
So he was probably killed by some other queer.
And these bullies are aptly punished by the group of outsider kids. So in these scenes when Will is queer-coded, queerness represents social exclusion and struggling with the expectations of gender, but it also represents overcoming homophobia through friendship. But in Robin's scenes in season 3, not only are we never given a nice in-depth experience of her experiences being gay, but we also seem to have arrived in a strange utopia where homophobia no longer exists in the 80s. The 80s were rife with institutional and societal homophobia, and to represent a gay teen without addressing that in some way feels like strange erasure, but also contradicts Will's experiences. Remember, a piece of media teaches us how to read it, and the contradictory portrayals of growing up gay in the 80s just don't make sense, and they shatter the internal logic of the world that the creators of the show have made. Okay. That was a long point and it was pretty detailed. The next one is pretty simple. Robin's coming out scene centers too much on Steve. Now, anyone who has ever come out in real life knows that the reaction of the person is really important. And the intimacy between the two characters in this coming out scene was touching, but I could see through it all the way into the writer's room. Robin's coming out scene seemed to be just another reason for us to love Steve. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't want his reaction to her to be negative, but a lot of the reactions to this scene on Twitter centered around Steve, how they felt so sorry for him for being rejected, but there was also people hailing him for being such a great ally. And the show's creators know that Twitter loves Steve. And watching the scene, I could tell this is what they were doing, and it was super distracting. And also, I wanted the scene to be about Robin, not Steve, primarily. Not only was it jarring, but it was also unnecessary. We already love Steve. His redemption arc has worked, okay? I think this example of Robin demonstrates a lot of the things wrong with season 3. A lot of it just felt like tokenism and box ticking. I was also excited to see where the friendship between Max and Eleven went, but I was disappointed when it went nowhere. I was also interested to see where Nancy's storyline would go with her working at the local newspaper, but again it went nowhere. We were sidetracked by monsters, which is fine, but then there was never a conclusion to her professional struggles. The thing is, I have high expectations of Stranger Things because I've loved the seasons 1 and 2 so much, because season 3 was enjoyable and I was happy to see them trying to be more diverse, but it just wasn't the one. It just didn't work. So Maya Hawke, who plays Robin, was quoted in the Metro saying, "Sometimes we can have empathy for people on screen that we wouldn't normally have empathy for in real life. If I could hope for anything, it's that maybe some people fell in love with Robin, and that helped them fall in love with girls who love girls and boys who love boys." What Maya says about on-screen empathy is true, and it's a huge reason why representation is so important, but unfortunately I don't think Robin's character is going to be loved in the same way as the other characters on Stranger Things are loved. Can Robin really be a gay icon if she doesn't have any weaknesses or flaws or fears? Stranger Things has proved it can create nuanced characters that people fall in love with, so why shouldn't we demand better? As I said at the beginning of the video, the inclusion of a gay character is amazing and it's progress, but it could have been so much better. So here's hoping that Stranger Things 4 develops a character. There is still time. We can still hope. Let's keep on celebrating progress, but also striving for better.